We're recording this meeting so we can share it with other interested members of the public to learn more about the proposed fare modification. We appreciate your time tonight and glad you can join us. We have a couple tools that we are sharing as part of our Zoom webinar experience. If you need any assistance, you can use the chat feature. It'll come directly to me, the help desk, and the panelist tonight, Daniel Miodonsky from Metra, who we'll hear from in just a moment. We are recording this meeting, so if you would like to share it with others, we will be sharing it on the Metra 2024 proposed fare plan. We will do a question and answer after Dan's presentation, and then we really encourage you to take our online survey to give additional feedback. We're hopeful that tonight is informative, gives you a chance to ask all of your questions, and as well give us your feedback. So we'll just give a quick overview. Then Dan has a presentation talking about Metra's approach and identify the specific strategies they're undertaking for the fare modification. We'll go into question and answer, and we're hopeful that you'll stay on and can take the survey to give us your feedback. So Metra is proposing a plan for 2024 that would simplify the fare structure to improve the rider experience. We want to know what you think about it. This proposal has 4 goals. The first goal is to encourage ridership. The second goal is to create a system that's easy to understand by the riders and customers. The third goal is to simplify onboard fare collection as much as possible. And the last goal is to meet Metra's financial and technical constraints. We encourage you to think about these goals as we're going through this presentation, and we'll also be sharing these goals later in Dan's presentation. We can put the goals into the chat so you can continue to refer back to them. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Daniel Miodonsky from Metra.
Thank you, Kendi, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Daniel Miodonsky, Senior Manager of Operations Planning and Analysis here at Metra, and as mentioned, I'm here to discuss the draft fare proposal for 2024. Just a order of meeting, I'm going to turn off the camera while I'm presenting. Next slide, please. So first, I'm going to review our current fare system. Then I'll discuss our process and proposal details. And lastly, I'll go over outreach activities and next steps. Next slide, please. So to start off with our current fare system. So this slide illustrates our current fare system with the pre-COVID monthly prices as reference. There are currently 10 fare zones, differing price points for the one-way and 10-ride fares. And I will say this is a simplified fare chart with prices to downtown only and not between zones, say, E and H. So in 2020, as a response to COVID, we introduced the $10 day pass. Then in 2021, in order to offer a similar value to folks riding short distances, we introduced the $6 day pass for 3 zones. Then in 2022, as we were beginning to rebuild our ridership losses from COVID, we introduced the $100 Super Saver monthly pass across all zones. And again, the pre-COVID monthly prices are shown struck through for reference. So what this table shows is we currently have a 10-zone system for one-ways and 10 rides, essentially 2 zones for day passes, and a flat fare for monthly tickets. Next slide, please. So this next slide illustrates the geography of our current zone system. The zones are roughly 5-mile increments starting from downtown and moving out towards zone J on the far left. Though we'll say there have been changes to recent years to change the borders of C and J specifically from just 5-mile increments. In addition, the table showing ridership share per zone for trips to downtown is shown on the right. And worth mentioning, trips to downtown currently constitute about 94% of all Metra trips, with the greatest share of riders coming from zone C at about 16%, D about 17%, and E at about 22%. So again, this is our current ridership share for trips to downtown, and then the current zone structure on the left. Next slide, please. So the previous slides describe Metra's current fare system. As the board adopted the fares for 2023, it was made clear that there was a desire to research a new fare system for 2024. A multidisciplinary internal working group comprised of employees from budget, planning, IT, media, customer service, and scheduling began to look at fare options for 2024. As Kindy already described these goals, but these goals were created to focus our thinking and guide our work. And just to reiterate, the goals are encourage ridership, create a system that is easily understandable for customers, and that's something we really wanted to emphasize with any new fare system we came up with. Simplify onboard fare collection as much as possible. And lastly, meet Metra's financial and technical constraints, knowing that the goal would be to implement this in 2024. Next slide, please. However, this task was very complex with no simple answer. There are many, many inputs to consider, as this slide illustrates. I want to highlight a few of these factors. Number one on top, board direction. As mentioned, the board encouraged us to investigate a simplified system of fares. Again, that's the Metra board. Title VI. Title VI refers to federal regulations that seek to make sure fare and service changes don't disproportionately impact low-income and minority areas. This is something we were required to consider and took seriously as we studied new options. Ridership needs. We wanted to be thoughtful to what customers' current price points were, and we analyzed how any proposal would change prices up or down. Peer review. One of the first things the multidisciplinary working group did was to examine peer cities nationally and internationally to see which ideas we could potentially use for Metra's system. App usage data. We are able to get anonymized usage data from the Metra app, which helps inform us on aspects like how often average customers use the monthly pass. Fare collection. We met with representative conductors from our districts to discuss options and get their input, and this has been an ongoing process of engagement. Market research. We performed some preliminary research on how riders would react to our proposal via focus groups. Budget goals. We also have to be cognizant of the fact that how we price the fares will have an impact on the revenue side and our ability to meet our budgeted revenue targets. And the last input to discuss, the strategic plan. Our board adopted Metra's strategic plan earlier this year. One of its stated objectives was to continue exploring ways to simplify our fare zone structure and incentivize other rider markets. We wanted to ensure a proposal was developed to be compatible with that objective. And I can do the screen share, please. Thank you. Next slide, please. So with those inputs in mind, the internal working group separated the fare system to 3 separate outputs. And those outputs are structure, products, and pricing. And again, these outputs were developed to focus our work as we developed a new system. Next slide, please. So first, I would like to discuss structure. To meet the goal of simplification, we aim to create a system with fewer zones from the table I discussed earlier. The working group examined several scenarios of zone consolidation, in addition to multiple different fare system concepts, including time of day or type of service. This list summarizes some of the different fare concepts we have investigated. Number 1 is a single fare zone, also known as the flat fare zone. With that system, after some initial forecasting, the revenue numbers are either too low or the fare would have to be so high that inner zones would experience significant fare increases. So we explored further concepts. We explored combining zones at different levels, and there were issues with either revenue, increasing fares from current levels, or not exceeding our Title VI thresholds. After some initial revenue modeling, it appeared a 4-zone approach could get us closest to balancing those different needs. First, we considered combining different letters, that is, using the existing zones to set the structure. However, we also looked at each line individually and took into account the line characteristics such as service levels, ridership characteristics, and geography. So while distance from downtown Chicago is a factor in our proposal, this approach allowed us for us to have it not be the only factor. And that is a draft approach we are presenting today, which we believe would come closest to hitting budget targets and Title VI goals. So this slide contains the overview of the proposed map. And again, this proposal is based on factors such as service, ridership characteristics, and geography. In addition, an important point to make here is that there's a downtown zone, what we are calling Zone 1. This is comprised of only of stations in downtown Chicago. And what this allows us to do is to discount intermediate trips or trips that don't go all the way downtown. This is a small but shrinking trip market that we'd like to attract back to the system, which is in alignment with our strategic plan. Again, as I mentioned, about 94% of trips travel all the way downtown. So this intermediate trip market is about 6% of current riders. It's something, again, we'd like to attract back to the system. So next slide, please. So I'm going to pause here for a moment just to folks on the call to review the map. And as information, the map is also posted online at metra.com.
We also put the link into the webinar chat.
Okay, I believe we could continue. Thank you. So this slide shows the draft fare table with proposed products and pricing. And again, this is also posted on metra.com. And also worth mentioning, we are already examining revised versions of this fare table based on some initial feedback. That's why it says draft is the watermark. But overall, we hope this is a simpler way to communicate fares. There are some aspects of this fare table I'd like to point out. So number one, after modeling hundreds of price points, the prices shown here represent our best attempts to balance budgetary, equity, and affordability concerns. We believe these price points would come closest to hitting our budget targets while not exceeding some of our Title VI thresholds. Also worth mentioning, no stations would see an increase in one-way fares under this price proposal. So we looked at it at a station level, and under this proposal, no stations would see an increase in one-way fares. Also important to note, the 10-ride pass would be replaced by a bundle of 5-day passes that can be used non-consecutively or consecutively. The 5-day pass bundle would be priced similarly to the 10-ride at 9.5 times the one-way fare. For most users, there wouldn't be a big change from what the 10-ride offers now, as instead of using 2 punches of a 10-ride, they would activate 1-day pass. We are proposing to make this change because this would enable more users to get value out of this price point, as previously users who needed to take multiple trips or transfer couldn't take advantage of the 10-ride ticket. It wouldn't be economically viable. In addition, the 5-day pass bundle would bring together our products as all time limited, again, which is the goal of improving fare collection. Also worth mentioning, the monthly pass would be priced at 20 times the one-way fare. This makes the pricing attractive to the 2 to 3 days a week user and represents a significant decrease from pre-COVID price point. So again, the monthly pass is priced at 20 times the one-way fare for folks who may commute or use the system 2 to 3 days a week. Next, I'd like to turn your attention to the section that says travel within zones 2, 3, and 4, that gray box area. This means if you are not going to downtown stations, these are the fares that would be available to you. Again, this is meant to incentivize folks taking those intermediate trips. And to reiterate, a ridership segment that has been declining and we would like to try to grow. Lastly, the bottom of the fare chart does not represent any changes for today. We are not proposing changes to our weekend ticket structure at this time. The $7 Saturday, Sunday, or holiday pass would be continued, as with the $10 all weekend pass. The final row shows the Regional Connect Pass, which would still be available as well, which allows Metra monthly pass users to have unlimited CTA and PACE access by purchasing the Regional Connect Pass for an additional $30 on top of that monthly pass price. So again, if you're a monthly pass user, you have the ability to purchase for the extra $30 a Regional Connect Pass, which allows unlimited travel for that month on all 3 service boards, Metra, CTA, and PACE. Next slide, please. So to summarize, the major points of the proposal broken up over the 3 aspects of the fare structure, like I mentioned, structure, products, and pricing. The key points are for structure, moving from 10 zones to a simplified 4 zones. And the zones would be combined based on individual line characteristics, not solely geography. Products. We'd standardize the products to match zones. If you think back to that slide I showed you in the beginning of the presentation with the current 10 zone structure and the different products, the day pass and monthly, which don't necessarily match up with the current zones, we would standardize products to match our zones. Not only that, we're proposing to replace the 10 ride with a similarly priced bundle of 5 day passes that can be used consecutively or non-consecutively. Pricing. 20 times a one-way ticket for a monthly pass and 9.5 times a one-way ticket for a bundle of day passes. And again, the monthly pass, that multiplier for the monthly pass represents a significant decrease than what it was pre-COVID. And lastly, as discussed with that downtown zone, that allows for an intermediate fare discount. So next slide, please. So where are we in this process? As mentioned, we had an internal working group to develop the fare proposal and do some preliminary modeling. We also had many conversations with the Metra board, who have been great help in developing this proposal. In addition, we conducted focus groups from each county to do some early testing of the model, of the fare model, that is. We also held a meeting with some stakeholder transportation groups to review the proposal, and we presented to the Metra board in June. In addition, as Cindy mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we have recently opened up a survey to gather more feedback on the fare proposal, which we hope you all will take. And lastly, we are holding pop-up meetings at downtown terminals or info tables at downtown terminals to intercept customers. And if you're Union Station tomorrow, in fact, you can come and speak to us further about the proposal. Next step, please. So lastly, here are the steps we're planning to undertake. Continue the public outreach activities. Again, we have the survey ongoing through August 6th. We've already done a pop-up meeting or an info table at Millennium Station, and we'll do the other downtown terminals this week and next. As we learn from public feedback, we'll incorporate what we can into the proposal, and these public outreach activities will be an important part of the comprehensive Title VI analysis that I mentioned earlier. And as we learn from the public, we'll incorporate what we can and craft the final proposal. If the Metra board ultimately approves of this, we would begin external marketing once approved to educate customers and employees so they know the new fare system and new prices. So that concludes my section of the presentation. I believe Cindy has a few additional slides and can open up to questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. That was really helpful to hear all of the different components. We have some questions. So if you would like to ask a question during today's presentation, we're only going to focus our questions around the fare modification. If you have other Metra questions, we will forward them to the appropriate staff. Are you ready for a couple of questions, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. There you are. Great. Thank you. So what is the status / impact on the senior disabled reduced ride fare price?
So there would be no impact to those who are eligible. We're not proposing any changes to the eligibility for those who currently receive reduced fare. The only changes would be with how the products are priced, which is shown on that fare table, which again, I encourage everyone to review at metra.com.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does the fare threshold, second question, does the fare threshold address future planned growth, i.e. stations west, south, north of the EJ and E, or intercity travel beyond the RTA district, i.e. Oswego, DeKalb, and Rockford?
That's a really good question. I know it's also been in the news lately with Rockford. It's something we are looking at. This proposal is, as you can imagine, focused on what the current Metra system is, but we believe that there are things we could do with this proposal to accommodate future growth if and when that happens.
Great, thank you. Does the structure, third question, does the structure meet the goal for assisting students with transit and financial insecurity?
So student fares,
about the student fares, yeah.
Yeah, so K through 12 students are still eligible for reduced fares as they are today. If they're referring to college students,
yes, they
that
are.
is that is a separate issue from this restructuring. But I believe it's fair to say we are open to discussing that with universities.
Okay. And this is a follow-up. Is it a university by university, or where could someone find more information? Would we be updating the FAQ?
Well, yeah. So at this stage, again, that's kind of a separate conversation from the fare structure. So
okay.
If there are any changes, we'd certainly post that online, all mechanisms that we can to notify any changes of fare. But yeah, it would. But right now, it's we just don't have that policy as part of the structure.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question is about the Fair Transit South Cook pilot program. Will this new proposed fare structure impact that?
So for those who don't know, the South Cook pilot, the Fair Transit South Cook pilot, is an initiative that's currently going on. It affects the Rock Island and the Metro Electric, which allows those two lines to receive reduced fares. That continuation is actually, it's Cook County funded. That continuation of the pilot is currently up to the county. We don't know the exact status of that past January 2024. However, I think it's also safe to say we all like it to evolve. And again, it's a county initiative. We're working with the county to look at the next steps there. But as of now, we don't have a answer past January 2024.
Great. The next one is actually about the identified fare map. I noticed that Highland Park is split into 2 zones. Parking at Metra stations usually covers Highland Park to Braeside, all within the town of Highland Park. I know the zone configuration was complex, but was this taken into consideration?
Yes, certainly we looked at the parking in townships as all. That was all part of the analysis that was performed. For the UP North specifically, we did look at service as the pattern, or as the break point. Highland Park service is on the skip stop UP North schedule, and that was the determining factor there. But certainly, great point. We expect to keep an eye on parking, keep an eye on how some of the price changes affect how ridership behaves.
Great, thank you. The next one is a broad question about the process. What types of comments and suggestions is Metra willing to take into consideration as building this proposal? And how will the public know their thoughts are being considered?
That's a great question. I can say that we are actively reviewing the survey responses at the email address you have up. We've responded in a very big thank you to our spokesperson, who has responded to every single email that's come in so far to that email address. If you email there, you likely have received a response from Metra. So we are taking the public feedback portion very seriously, and this is certainly the focus groups, the survey, which we also advertise with what we call seat drops, little flyers on the train that have a QR code. So we're trying to all outlets to get the word out, and then yeah, we're reviewing every single piece of feedback. We already have some changes that we're looking at that could potentially be used to accommodate some feedback.
Great. We have another question about the reduced fare for senior and disabled, clarifying that it would be 50% of the fare product as proposed.
It's approximately 50%. That is correct.
Okay, great.
There's some rounding in there, but that's the approximate.
That's great. Why does the proposal replace the 10 ride ticket with a day pass bundle?
So that's a great question. Something we, again, took very seriously and a hard look at. The two main reasons. And first of all, to even back up for say the two reasons. Number one is we expect most folks won't even have a big change in their behavior, because most people who use it will be found, again, through that app usage data input that we were able to have now with Metra. Most people do use 2 punches of their 10 ride, 2 digital punches when they're using the app of their 10 ride. So, one in the morning, one in the evening. So most folks shouldn't see a big change if they're using a 10 ride, because if you come to work on Monday, you use one day pass on Monday, go again on Friday, use another one on Friday. And it's not that different from having that 10 ride pass, just getting it punched twice. So that's the first thing. And the 2 reasons we really wanted to look at that is, one, currently, if you use multiple lines or take multiple trips in a day, that 10 ride doesn't add that value, because it would just not be economically feasible to take. For example, if you transferred both directions, be 4 punches a day. The day pass enables that, so it unlocks that value to more users. Number 2, as mentioned, one of the goals is to simplify our fare collection procedures and policies. And with the day pass, we believe that the success rate for collection will be a little bit higher. So that's the main reasons for that.
Great, thank you. We have another question about our engagement process. What time are the pop-up meetings this week and next at Millennium Park, and where exactly? I'm just going to move to the next slide so we can share that information. Great. And then we can also put this into the chat.
So we already went to Millennium Station first. That's 3 to 7 on July 18th, so last Wednesday. I will say though, LaSalle Street's not too far of a walk if you're in the area. On August 1st, we'll be at LaSalle Street from 3 to 7. So feel free to come by then, or tomorrow at Union Station. I'll be there personally. Ogilvy as well at
me too.
Yeah. So yeah, welcome you guys to come and come say hello or ask any further questions that may occur to you. But yeah, that is the current schedule of events.
Great, thank you. And I do want to just really reinforce that Metra is responding to every email sent to this email address. We're also looking at all of the survey responses we've received through our online survey. We also are reviewing the information as we're preparing it and sharing that for updating the FAQs. So it really is a process in which the input is incredibly important to making these decisions and creating an updated fare structure that meets the proposal goals.
Absolutely, thank you, Candy, for that. And we recognize this is perhaps the largest fare change we've done in Metra's history, so it is something that we'd really like to make sure we, incorporate public feedback when possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going through all the questions. We did put those times where we'll be in person. We'll have all of this information and a chance to meet with Metra staff to talk about the 3 upcoming pop-ups that we'll be having. We'll also have this webinar recorded and on the website shown here. This is at metra.com/2024 fare plan. We'll also have that online survey open through August 8th. So we've gotten really great feedback from that, and we encourage everyone to use that as a platform for, it's a lot of required questions around your preferences, but then there's also an open-ended opportunity at the end. Okay, another question. Has Metra evaluated this fare structure? Did they investigate what other folks in Europe do with fares and what we could learn from them? maybe thinking more about your peer, share a little bit more about your peer analysis, Dan.
Yeah, we absolutely did. We looked at some cities in Europe when we put together our peer review, including London, Zurich, Edinburgh. Different transit agencies we thought we could look at just how they communicate fares, not just commuter rail, but how they could communicate transit fares, what sort of things they were doing. Part of the evolution of this design, we did look at the downtown fare zone. Partly came from one of those cities that we looked at, Zurich specifically for that, and for some of the way we're communicating fares also came from some of those cities. So yeah, we did look across European cities where possible, and we continue to do so. And yeah, where we think it makes sense to either use their products or means of communication, we'll certainly look at, and have no shame in stealing good ideas that are out there.
Yeah, that's great. We have a question clarifying this Rock Island special fare. Dan, can you talk a little bit more about the new Rock Island service and the fare related to that, and how it is connected to this proposed fare approach?
Yes, I believe this is referring to the South Cook program. And again, that's the program that's funded by Cook County that gives discounts to Rock Island Line and Metra Electric Line users. Again, this is something that is funded by the county, and right now we don't know the status past January 2024, but we're all supportive of the goals of the program, and we're looking to see with discussion with the county how that program will evolve.
Thank you. Just reviewing all of our questions. Thanks for your patience, everyone. If you have more questions, you can put them in either the chat or in the Q&A. We're monitoring both. I know the one question that hasn't been asked, Dan, but maybe would be helpful in particular for the recording. But can you talk a little bit about the proposal discontinuing the $6 and $10 day pass and the $100 Super Saver monthly pass? I think that's another change that we might want to highlight for the recording. Thank you.
Sure, and that was the decision, again, to standardize the zone or the fare products, and also the goal of simplification. So now we have, again, just thinking back that original slide I showed, that you have 10 zones for some products, essentially two zones or two types of tickets for another type of products, and then one ticket for another product, the monthly pass. So again, this is a part of standardizing it, recognizing also that those were COVID era promotions. So we're something to look to hopefully be a more sustainable fare as well from the revenue side. So that's all part of the decision-making process to move towards zone-specific day passes and monthly passes.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many changes, I would say, with COVID and then trying to recover all of our different services. So those fares were great, but we also want to make sure that Metra can sustain all of their operations and bring back riders. So that's really exciting.
Correct. Yeah, it's just the balance we had to strike of trying to make it financially sustainable, but also recognizing current price points. And that's we believe our proposal does our best effort at doing that.
Great, thank you. Well, we've answered all of the different questions. We've gotten some nice comments, so we appreciate folks recognizing how challenging and hard this work is, and that Metra is just going out to ensure that everyone has awareness and the opportunity for input. So if we don't have any additional questions, let me just look at our participant number and making sure I think we've answered all of the different questions. And again, we would ask folks to, the survey will pop up once we end this webinar for everyone. We encourage you to take the time to take the survey. If you're have others, trained buddies or coworkers or others that you know take the Metra, we would love for you to share that with them to make sure that both we're learning about, they're learning about these proposed fare modifications, and then also just to make sure that we have a wide range of input from around the overall system. We also will be updating the FAQ and providing information on the website you can see here, and we've put those different web pages into the chat. And then lastly, we'll be in person tomorrow. We'll be at Union Station from 3 to 7, LaSalle Station from 3 to 7 on August 1st, and then Ogilvie on August 2nd, also from 3 to 7. And so if you have comments, we encourage you again to email them directly to the 2024 fare plan at metra.arr.com. Dan, thank you so much.
I think there was one question too that may have been added this side of the ledger.
Sure.
What's happening with CTA pace and Metra fare integration beyond the monthly pass add-on? So can you just touch on that real quick?
Oh, sure.
This was not part of the original structure. Again, this was Metra fares we're looking at, but recognizing that we do have that vehicle for some integration with the monthly pass as a regional connect, which also, with the zones, the 2-to-1 zone monthly pass being $75 the proposal, it's a pretty good value for $105 for in that zone pair for all you can travel on all 3 service boards per month. But also we had to recognize the fact that if this was a proposal for 2024, we wanted to make sure whatever we developed was implementable. So we know we couldn't necessarily do a lot of huge infrastructure changes across all of our 240 plus stations in a matter of 6 to 10 months. So don't think it necessarily precludes any of that future work, but it's part of the structure process was focusing on Metra fares specifically.
Great. Yeah, thank you for saying that. Between the chat and the Q&A, I'm trying to make sure we're getting through all of the comments and questions. So, oh, here's another question. I'm sorry if I missed this, but when will the new fares being implemented? Or are they still just being discussed? Maybe talk a little bit about the timeline, the estimated, if you have one.
Great question. So we're obviously in the public feedback portion right now when we're analyzing comments as they come in. And if, once we have all the feedbacks processed, we'll put forth a final proposal. If the Metra board does adopt that, we would shoot for early 2024. So the typical time is February when we do fare changes. So it'll be that time frame if it's approved as in the coming months.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Let's go. Let me just. Okay. I think those are all the questions. Just looking through the list one more time. Again, we hope that you can take the survey that will pop up. Go to the website as we get more of these answers identified and more information, new information to share. And then come visit us at one of the pop-ups coming up in the next week. Again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time and interest in this topic. And we will put all of our updates on the Metra website for your future updates.
Yeah, thank you, Kendi, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Great. Thank you. Bye.